Welcome back. This is from the outside in. My name is Ismaine and We're so happy to be back with you today. Welcome back. Welcome back, Robin. I'm stumbling upon my words today. Over my
Good to
words
see you,
today.
mate.
We are Tuesday. This is not Wednesday. Usually we do that on Wednesday, and then we Tuesday today. It's good to see you, Robin, again for a new episode of From the Outside In, and we're going to discuss education here in America compared to France in the UK, higher education. I'm going to get started, I guess. A year ago almost, I graduated at the age of 44. I've got my executive MBA. So my education was mostly done in France, from elementary school, middle school, high school. Even my bachelor degree was done in France, and then I moved to America, and I thought that I needed to have an MBA to be able to go up the ladder in the workforce here in America. But I didn't want to spend too much money. One thing as a native French citizen, one of the things that is very hard for me to comprehend is the high cost of education here in America. And the good thing that things are changing right now in America is that you have more and more online education available to people. And I did my MBA, which was extremely challenging because at the same time I was an elected official. I had 2 kids, so family take care of a job. It took me 3 years to achieve this MBA, but I got it for a fraction of a price that you can see in probably bigger school that where you have to attend on-site, the courses and go on class and meet with team classmates and stuff like this. Mine was really significantly reduced as far as the price, because I applied for a grant that was provided by the school. The school his name is Quintic School of Business and Technology, which is based in Washington, D.C. And their program, which is fully accredited, is completely online. So that was my experience as to get my executive MBA. The difference between a normal MBA and executive, it's much more centered to leadership for middle-aged professional like myself. And so it's been almost a year that I graduated. I didn't incur any kind of debt, long-term debt, because I was able to reimburse my debt quickly because it was not super expensive. But all of this, though, makes me feel about people. And recently, what the Biden administration wanted to do to cancel the education debt of many people, their loans, education loans, college loans from many people, which I think has been deemed unconstitutional. It's very, very worrisome to me with someone who has 2 kids to see how much education costs in America. Kids, young kids, getting into debt of hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, can't see the end even after spending 10 years working on a job because they have to reimburse that, but they also want to live their American dreams, have a home and be able to have a nice life, but they have to deal with the consequences of going to higher education. And that's very interesting also for me to hear that a lot of people say, well, nobody forced them to go to college and incur debt like this. But unfortunately, not everybody has options, I guess, to go somewhere else because they have a passion or a desire to do something. If you want to be a lawyer, if you want to become a doctor, if you want to become even an engineer, we need engineers. We need people to be able to build, the device we have around us. We need people to improve the technology that help us to live better. Well, you need to have a master degree. You need to have an engineering degree to be able to do all of this. And even these degrees cost an arm and a leg, and it's very. I think it's wrong, in my opinion, as someone who lived in a country where education was mostly free and paid by taxpayer, because the idea in France is, at least was, that an educated population is a better population. So if you make education accessible to the masses, then it's at the end you're going to have a better population, being able to get higher jobs, probably pay higher taxes. I maybe I don't think of everything, but again, as someone who lives here now, I'm always struggling with the idea that to get a master degree, a bachelor degree, even an associate degree, which is a couple of years after getting your high school diploma, you have to spend so much money. So to start this conversation, Robin, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Do you have a question for me? I also.
Well, the question is maybe if you can piggyback on what I just said.
Yeah.
You've been living in the US for as long as I've been living, actually longer than I've been living here. What's your take on all of this? How do you feel? Do you think that in America people should be restrained by money to get a higher education? Granted that today we have trade jobs, being an electrician, a plumber, when you can make easily 6 figures. But again, everybody's different. Humans are complex and complicated beings. Not everybody wants to become an electrician. Not everybody wants to become a plumber. I love electricity. I think in the next career, maybe in the next life, I'll be probably an electrician or doing stuff like this. I love electricity. But not everybody likes that. Some people really want to become lawyers. Some people want to do those jobs that require today an engineering degree, a master degree, or even maybe a PhD degree. I don't know. You cannot become a scientist without a PhD. You want to do a PhD, you are going to talk about it. It costs a lot of money to do so, unless you can secure grant money, or the college or the university you're going to is going to help you pay for that. But the money is coming from somewhere else anyways. So this is what I wanted to see. What do you think of the American system, the higher education system here in America compared to the UK, compared to Europe, and what's your take?
Oh wow, where to begin? It's a huge topic.
A lot to unpack.
Yes, yeah. I'm trying to think of the best way. I think maybe the first thing that comes to my mind, Ismaine, is that in some ways it's hard to generalize, right? Yeah. American higher education, especially, ranges from the best in the world, right? If you're going to do physics at MIT, or you're going to go to Harvard or some of the Ivy League schools, you're going to get as good an education as you might anywhere else in the world. Of the top 10 universities in the world, 8. Usually it's 8 of the 10 are in the United States. The other 2 are in the UK. And so we could say, well, in America, you can get the best education and you will pay for it. And you will pay huge amounts of money for it. But maybe if you go off to Harvard and do a Harvard law degree, you're going to easily be able to pay those fees back out of what you earn as, let's say, a lawyer in New York or something. If that is the life you choose. On the other hand, there are also, in my opinion, schools in the United States that I wouldn't pay any money to go to. And on the third hand, if I can have 3 hands, there are perfectly good state schools where you can, if you are live in that state, you can attend for perfectly reasonable fees, and you will get what you pay for. You'll get a good product for the money that you pay, as long as you apply yourself. So it's hard to generalize. I was at university. I did all of my degrees in the UK, I did so at a time when the government entirely paid for university fees. It was just part of the state schooling, which I guess in the US we'd call public schooling, except that in the United Kingdom at that time, that went all the way through to the end of a 3-year degree. So I never actually had to pay, previously I never had to pay a penny for my schooling in the UK, right up through to getting my graduate degree at Cambridge, right? So I actually got, there's 2 or 3 degrees I got from Cambridge that I didn't have to actually pay for. And I didn't have to worry about how they were going to be paid for either. I didn't even have to fill in weird forms to get funding. It was all done automatically. Now that situation has changed in the United Kingdom. Now there are fees that you must pay as a student. They are capped, so they don't run to the really huge amounts that some undergrads and grads pay in the US. And also there are government interventions. If you're going to your first degree and you come from a poorer family, the government will subsidize. So nobody is really in hardship, certainly to get a first degree in the UK. There was an argument that I remember from decades ago when the debate was going on in the UK about whether they should stop paying for university education as they did when I was at university. Now, I should say, as I have said, they did stop paying for university education. There are, as I say, there are subsidies and so on. But the idea of everything's paid for and you don't have to think about it, that has been lost in the UK. But I remember at the time that was being considered, an argument that I thought that interested me a lot, and I still haven't quite worked out where I come down on this. But the argument said, look, requiring people to pay for their education at the university level is essentially socially divisive because of the different attitudes and expectations that the middle class or the upper class have about debt versus the working class and the lower class. In other words, if you are brought up in a working class environment, you are much less likely to be comfortable taking on debt to continue your education. So the argument was that by requiring people to borrow money to pay for their education, you'd get all the middle and upper classes doing it, but the working and lower classes wouldn't do it. And so it reduces social mobility. Now, I find that a very interesting idea. There's some problems with that idea, but on the surface, I think that's probably true. On the other hand, on the other side of the argument is why on earth should taxpayers, some of them who don't have degrees, some of them of whom are poor, why should they be funding the degrees of people who, because they have the degrees, can go off and make lots more money than those who have helped put them in school through taxpayer money? The counter argument to that is, well, those people will end up paying more in taxes anyway. So, my opinion on the way to go on this is, I do think this is a complex question. And
it is complex. There's all of this is complex. We can have the same argument about street. Why should I pay, taxpayer? What should I pay tax to be able to build street or to be able to build a sewer system or stuff like this? I mean, I've heard these kind of arguments, especially from our purist libertarian friends.
Yes, indeed. But let us also say, since we're about to get maybe slightly philosophical, there is obviously a distinction between the government paying for a benefit that is non-exclusive, right? So if there is a street, everybody can use it. That's a different thing from if your education is paid for, only you can use it directly. Maybe in some way other people in your country benefit because, blah, blah, blah.
As you said, I think it's more complicated than that. I think that, as I said at the beginning of this video, I think that the better the populace is educated, the better it is for a community, a nation.
Sure, but my point was that I'm sorry, I'm just to say, absolutely. But the point is that benefit is indirect. You get a direct benefit. I get an indirect one. Whereas the street, we get the same benefit. That's all I was saying. But carry on.
No, I agree with you. You're absolutely right. There's a direct benefit, as you mentioned too, is that eventually someone who has a higher paid job will pay higher taxes. And therefore, if we had, at least in America, a just system with taxes, that should benefit communities that have a need for, a better need for taxpayer money. I also think that there's something we also forget to mention. And I don't know how to address that, because some people see that as a socialist term, but when you live in a nation, a country, there's some kind of a social contract that you have, and that social contract, again, if it was just and fair, which is not always, even in countries like France and the UK, will be that someone is going to pay with your taxes for your education. Therefore, your education is going to be, it's going to help you be a person in the society that is going to be able to help fulfill that social contract. You're going to have a higher salary, therefore you're going to help better with, for a country like France in the US, with healthcare, with retirement and stuff like this, right? But here it's not the same in America, because everything is almost private. Healthcare is almost private. At least for you and me, it's private. We don't have the government paying for it.
I was going to say, but just let me flag on that.
Yes, sure.
More healthcare dollars are spent by the government than by private individuals in the United States. Medicaid and Medicare are the most, together, and all the other subsidies are, So actually, healthcare is a complicated one too. Maybe we'll do a show that.
It's a complicated one, and we can discuss it. But I mean, when you see the billions of profit that insurance are making on the back of sick people, and when profit takes higher, what's the word I'm looking for? Takes higher advantage compared to the health of people, that's something we need to keep. We will have to address one day in this country, and a lot of people on the right actually realize that. But that's for another discussion. Insurance company deny a lot of health care to people, or decide for you what's best, even if it goes against the recommendation of your doctor, and that's just a reality. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in France. France is a mix of private and public healthcare. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I mean, it's different. We can discuss it next time, because
we must do another show or two or seven on healthcare.
But look, I am not for. I'm a product of a public school, French public school, and I think I quite ended up well. I'm not a woke person. I'm kind of completely, deranged. Like we can see some people now, they are. But the public school in this country have gone completely crazy, and that's something that may change my mind as how we are going to fund schools.
Okay, can you explain what you're referring to there, Ismaine? You said public schools in this country, in the United States, are going crazy. So you're a father. You've got kids in schools. I'm not. I don't. So I'm really interested in what your experience of that.
Well, so the funding of school already it's different here in the US than it is in France. But my point is that as I'm getting kids and I see what's going on in school, how, and again, it's probably for another discussion, but kids are more and more exposed to content that they should not be. It was political content, ideological content, sexual content, gender ideologies and stuff like this that I don't think at least kids from elementary to high school should not be exposed. There are more and more calls for people to defend public school in America and allow people to be able to decide where they're going to put their property taxes to educate their kids. And right now, just in my district, which is very leaning left and sometimes I would say like far left, I pay taxes from my property tax to fund the school, and it's a lot of money. And I don't see another choice. Even a homeschooling for me right now, it's not a choice. I just cannot do that. However, I will be very happy to have the government of the state of Pennsylvania say, hey, you know what? Now we're going to let people decide what they want to do with their taxpayer money and choose where they want to put their kid and use that taxpayer money and put in the school of their liking that fit with their personal values and principles, and we cannot do that. As opposed to, and so France, in France, the way it works, of what I recall, is that first of all, school were not used as an institution to condition kids and put some political propaganda the way it was, but the funding of public school in France it's a mix of different taxes, not only based on the property taxes. And one thing also I've noticed from the American school compared to the French school is that there's a lot of private interest that mingles with the schools. And I was showing
It's in the US.
In the US, I was showing you this before we start the show. It's not only that. My son, his name is Evan, has a shopping list to buy gift from this company. Right? It's nice, but we are basically telling kids, hey, why don't you put some money in this envelope to buy stuff directly from this company or whatever?
They're not actually taking money from the kids to do that, though.
Well, you need to have parents' authorization. Basically, the parents are here. They, put the name, put how much you're going to put for money, and the kids are going to buy gift for the parents or anyone who is in this list based on the money that you're going to give them. And you don't have to do it. But my point is that.
But I just want to make sure I understand this, Ismaine.
Yeah, sure.
It seems, I think what's being suggested here is that a particular company has gone into a relationship with a school, a government-funded school, to facilitate it selling products to the families whose kids are at the school.
That's how
have I got that right?
Yes, that's how I get it. Yep.
And why on earth would the school agree to do that? Like, what purpose does that serve?
Because I'm going to tell you why. Because I think they probably got money from that.
They're getting a cut.
They're getting some cut. Like, how many times we see here school doing fundraising and having partners to do fundraising. Like, oh, go buy a pizza to it's not, I'm just saying the name, but it's not, I'm not slandering or whatsoever. I'm just an example. I don't think even it's with them, but oh, buy this pizza with Domino's or Papa John's, and the school is going to get 25% of the proceeding and stuff like this. To me, it's outrageous. I pay taxpayer money already, and the school are going to do this kind of fundraiser with private companies to get money to be able to do whatever they want with the money. Sometimes it's to buy supplies, sometimes it's to do other activities, maybe to help other kids that are in need. But this is another thing that I don't see a lot. And I know we went from higher education to this kind of in a segue, but sorry for that. But it's very hard for me to accept this kind of stuff that where again, private entities are entering schools. And I see a bit of propaganda. Now kids all know Papa John's. Everybody knows this company here. And then they probably know another company that's doing that. It's hard for me to accept this kind of stuff as a native French-born citizen.
So this is interesting because I can relate to what you're saying there, Ismaine. I certainly feel that if a primary school in England did what you've just said, your school here in the US is doing, right? Your kid's school. That would probably be on the news and people would be outraged, right? I think so, because culturally it would be anathema. But let me ask you, you have a school, it's got to get money from somewhere. If it can get it from, commissions from Papa John's, then that reduces your property tax. Is anybody being harmed? What is the basis of the objection to this, other than it just doesn't feel right? Is there a philosophical problem here or a moral problem with the mixing of private and, let us say, public interest? Is there something inherently wrong with that? I mean, we might say, for example, that the services that I get, so I live in Seattle, the city services that I get, my trash being, picked up, the recycling and composting getting done, they work because my taxpayer money is spent on a contract with private companies that actually perform a function. And indeed, I would not want the government performing the function because they would do it a lot less efficiently, and I would not be able to fix it when they screw it up. I'm much happier to have the private companies, just as private companies build roads, private companies build hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always going to be some kind of relationship between working together of public and private. So given that, what really is the objection here to this situation that Evan and you are facing, for example, with this shopping list at school?
Well, you may help me with how to put it the right way, but here's how I feel with my own words. To me, it's conditioning the kids. It's already planting a seed in their heads about one brand or another. It's about how can I say that? It's about not giving parents a choice sometimes, right? When my kid says, "Oh, Papa, there's a fundraising for, and all my friends and kids are going to buy this pizza and we're going to give to one another. I don't like Papa John's. What do I do?" Right? How do I tell my kids, "Sorry, you're not going to be like the other kids because I don't like Papa John's, or I don't support them because they took a stand on a political issue that I disagree strongly with, or I boycott them, or whatever, what is the reason?"
Yes.
I feel that I'm being forced. And my children is going to be look at, "Oh, you're the kid who doesn't do these kind of things. Oh, you're the other kids who doesn't want to do this."
Right. Yes, your child is being put in a position where he's made to pay a price for you and your family's acting with what it regards as its integrity. But your kid has to pay a price for that.
It may not.
Potentially.
If there's a fundraising for, I don't know, for a good cause, but it's being used a private company that I don't like or I disagree with or whatever. How do I explain that to my kids? "Sorry, kiddo, but you know what? These kids are too young to understand that, and I don't want to I already talk too much politics with my own kids and my 8 years old, and I know sometimes I should not be doing this, and I'm trying to to not do that. But how do I explain? This company took a stand, or I don't know. And again, for me, there's also a kind of conditioning. These people who go to school, they don't care about kids, in my opinion. They're here to plant a seed to make more revenue and more money. I think it's a moral issue to me. Leave the kids alone. The kids at school are not here to be sent subliminal message about Papa John's. Again, and I apologize, I don't mean to slander or libel Papa John's, and it's an example. I just thought about them, and that's it. So I don't want that to be construed this way. Absolutely not. But let's say Lily Store, and Lily Store doesn't care about my kids. They're here because they want to be able to plant a seed in their brain and say, "Oh, you know what? Next time I want a pizza, I'm going to go to Lily Store instead of maybe going to other options." Because at 8 years old, they were planted the seed that their Lily Store, not that has been at the school and partnering and giving you things. It's outrageous to me. I just cannot. So there's two things here. The thing that I think it's conditioning and brainwashing kids, which I don't think it's right. And if it was just a pizza or whatever, that would be, but I think it's more than that. There's more to it. And secondly, is that it put parents and kids in a position when they don't want to do something that the school deem that they want to do. And there's probably more to this. This is the two things I can think of. I want to be free to make the decision I want to, as much as I can, and I want to be put on my kids in a position where they're going to be the villain or the bad person because they didn't do it like everybody else. And unfortunately, that happens. Does it make sense? Is it a good point? Or
No, they are good. Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand it. And as you've explained it, Ismaine, it makes me even more glad that I'm not a father facing this, because I don't know what I would do. I mean, I'm pretty stubborn when it comes to, issues that I think are moral, maybe political issues, I haven't been vaccinated, and I was able to handle the inconveniences of that. I'm talking about the COVID immunization. It's not a vaccine. I misspoke. But, the COVID immunization, because I would not, for whatever reasons, I felt very strongly about that. That, as everybody knows, caused me to have to pay a price for a long time, right? I couldn't go to restaurants in my city. I was excluded from many things. I was able to pay that price. For me, it was my choice. But if my kids had to pay any price, if my kids' life was being made difficult because I was standing on an issue that I cared about, that would be that would tear me apart, I think.
Yep.
And I think that I think the fact, when I think of that, it seems you know what I want to do? I actually want to go to the principals of some schools who are doing this and have them justify that to me and say, well, how dare you put me in that position? What right do you have? And if they would say, well, we need the funds because then I guess I would say to them, well, your job is to get the funds in a way that doesn't threaten my children and my family, based on the views that we have. There's a million other ways you can do it.
Just for your information, that's mostly not the principal, but probably the board of director that govern the school district.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
School districts are governed by a board of director that are elected, and the principal's job is to run the school, the elementary school, the high school, and basically also to do the policies, implement the policies of the board. So that would be probably these people to be. Although I guess fundraising initiative may be from the principal.
Now, actually, that's interesting, Ismaine, right? Because here in the US, you're talking about the school board of elected positions.
Yep.
We don't have that in the UK. There's no equivalent in the UK. There's no. Now, so I guess what would happen would be, here's the answer to my question then. The answer would be, well, they've been democratically elected. It's their decision. If you don't like it, go stand for the school board.
Exactly.
Now, that's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is a tricky one. And in France, actually, if I'm not mistaken, up to high school, the schools, I think, are managed in a joint venture, I don't know if I can say that, in a joint way between the municipalities, so the elected officials in the municipalities, the mayor and the council, and the national education department, of the state of France, of the French Republic. But I think the municipalities have a whole power into the way schools are funded and run, if I'm not mistaken. So there's still, at least in France, if I recall well, there's still a way to discuss issues going through the mayor, if I'm not mistaken. But here, you're absolutely right. You elect people and you can get rid of them. Most of the time here, I would say in my district, it's been so blue that it's going to be extremely hard to get rid of the ones that are running and are elected. But normally you should be able to get rid of those who are not doing a good job for your school district and your kids.
It's a shame though, isn't it? Because by the time you find the members of the school board who are implementing policies that are hurting your kids, and then you run against them, and then you get elected, you campaign, you get elected, by that time your kid's already harmed and is on to the next school.
Well, yes, that's one of the things that scares me a lot. I've been working with my kids to make sure that if there's any kind of wokeness going to the classroom, if my daughter already been told a couple of times that she was racist. Right, tell a girl who was born from two immigrants, one is Polish, one other is Algerian French, that she's racist, and by white people who I strongly think that their parents are on the left side, just because she was complaining about a black kid who was harassing her. And after asking him to stop many times, he didn't. Therefore, she went to the principal. The kids got in trouble. And then she was told she was racist. So, but I'm saying that...
if I was a parent, I'd be wanting to take him to court. I would be so angry, I couldn't even tell you.
Well, so, but to tell you this, that I'm trying to protect my kids against this kind of stuff coming from kids, but also from teachers coming with that kind of stupidity and wokeness where they are pushing this gender and race ideologies down the throats of our kids who are not even at that point of thinking. They're not able kids
to understand what they're being indoctrinated with.
When you see your own daughter coming distressed and crying, saying, "I was told that I'm racist for standing for myself just because the kid was black," and it has nothing to do with the color of the kid. It was nothing to do with his origins. It was just he was harassing my daughter. And she couldn't do anything by talking to him. You see this where it goes when kids are already using that word so easily. So I try to protect my kids, and I'm talking to them to avoid the damage. And granted, so far, the teachers that my kids have had, I think, have not been to a point where they push for this kind of stuff. But I'm worried that as my daughter is going to go to middle school next year, things are going to be different. And then when she's going to start eating high school. So I'm working with my daughter, trying to protect them from that. And, but I think also that a lot of damage done by work teachers and work school administrators can be probably not prevented, but at least lessened by parents being involved in their kids.
Yeah.
I don't go to school district meetings. I think if I had time, I could, but because of other responsibilities with my children. But if one day I can go, I'll go there, because I think parents needs to get more involved nowadays in their kids' education. My parents in France never had to do that. We trusted the teachers. The teachers were teaching academia. They could even punish you. If you were here in America now, if they can't even do that. They going too far, pushing for work ideologies, political ideology into our kids' brains. But they can even do their jobs many times with difficult kids. So the school in the US has become something that I've never known before in France. Completely different system, the completely different attitude with the kids and the parents. But what I like very much though here, it's the local control of school in America. I think that's something that France should be doing. A real local control. You elect people that are in charge of your school, and they only do that. And you can, if you have a problem, you go directly to them. Again, in France, it's a mix of municipality and the higher education, with different departments in charge of the overall budgeting and stuff like this. It's complicated, and I think I like the political system of school, although I wish it was not politicized and there was non-partisan election.
You probably can't have your cake and eat it on that, right? It's like, if you want it elected and you want it through a political process, then expect it to be politicized. I mean, although maybe it's always politicized
I
anyway,
disagree,
right?
because when I was an alderman, I ran for an election. My city was a non-partisan election. There was not Democrat or Republicans or whatever. We were non-partisan, and we were come together as citizens trying to make our city better. I do think we should be doing the same for school district. Elect people because you want to be able to get rid of them at the next election if needed to, or want to elect them, but you want to make that non-partisan. So it's not about Democrats. When it's non-partisan, I
never mentioned parties. I never mentioned parties. I just mentioned politics. That's different.
Oh, politics.
I was saying,
you're right. I conflate both of them, to be honest.
Yeah. No. Okay, but it's important for us to distinguish. I'll be clear. What I was referring to was the fact that, I guess, people are going to run who feel strongly enough that they want to run, and that is likely to be correlated with political views. I mean, you certainly have political views. Absolutely. If you ran for school board, that it might be non-partisan, but obviously you would be there to make sure that children were protected from things that you regard as damaging. And for you would want to do that in one way, whereas somebody with different political views from yours might want to do it in another. So, what I mean is,
my way would be to say no to all of it and say, let's focus on academia. Simple. There's no politics here, right?
but to somebody else, that's a political view. I mean, that's a view that I share.
That's a good point.
But a view that I think, not only do I share it, I do think it's a distinct view from any view which consciously seeks to put political propaganda, left, right, I don't care, in front of kids. But unfortunately, if you were running on that platform for school board, you would have to argue that case against people that want to propagandize children, and they would be seeking the votes of people in the district who agree with their politics, whether or not it's a partisan race.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
Although, but having said all that, it is also worth saying that, of course, where there are people and agendas, there are politics anyway. So I'm thinking about, there's certainly in the UK, I don't feel education is as politicized as in the US. It certainly is not. However, like in France, local and national government are involved in setting constraints on schools, setting policies for schools,
exactly.
education policies,
Yep.
and that is going to be politically motivated. I know that, for example, my uncle, he's retired now, but he retired early as a teacher. He had a whole career, a whole life. His career was in teaching at elementary level, little kids. He's very good at it. And he retired early because back in the, I'm going to say 80s going into, no, not 80s, 90s going into the 2000s, the governments increasingly set down specific targets and methodologies that had to be implemented in state-run schools, right? So that's 93% of all the schools in the UK are government-run. And so teacher after teacher started becoming exhausted by the fact that rather than being able to just get in the room and teach in the best way they knew how, they became record keepers, they became testers, they became administrators, they became bureaucrats to satisfy this this broad view of the governments of the time, that let us say record keeping and was more important than it had been before. That exams maybe are less important. That trusting the teacher, the hiring good teachers and then trusting the teacher to do it in the way that they see best is not acceptable because they had an agenda towards uniformity across the country. But implementing that agenda of uniformity meant reduced standards and the loss of high quality, passionate teachers. And my uncle was one of those. Over the years, he just got beaten down, and he loved teaching. But he didn't love being a teacher as all of these policies came down from on high. And it was something called the national curriculum, and it became more and more and more detailed, and they would have to check more and more boxes and for each student. And oh my goodness. And anyway, so
But I agree. But in the meantime, how do you? So let me tell you this too. If there are any teacher listening to us, if you're not a work teacher and you believe in academia and making sure that kids are being prepared for the future, and you leave all the gender, sexual education to the parents, I'm on your side, and I want to tell you, I understand how much you have on your shoulders. It's outrageous today what we have done to teachers. The good teachers, they have to be teachers, they have to be social workers, they have to be parents, they have to be whatever, right? Why don't we just let them teach the right thing? Academia, math, geography, everything like this. But we need to stop requiring teachers to be fundraisers and psychologists and therapists and all of this, right? We have to stop this madness. So really, my heart goes to those ghost teachers who still love their jobs, but have been put in a position where there's a lot of pressure to push for political, ideological, cultural agendas. And when we ask them to do an even more complex job, when you're exactly right, they have to check boxes and do everything, and there's no room for innovation, if I can say like this, for them to be able to try different things with different kids, because now humans are complex beings, and not every kid is the same, right? So I want to say that I don't know how many people will watch this video, but kudos to these teachers to those teachers I'm talking about. I feel for you, and a lot of them are resigning in this country now. First of all, they are not paid well. Most teachers are paid less than six figures for doing a job. Some say, oh, look at all the vacation they have. Yeah, granted, they have a lot of vacation, but most of them, after they've done their 6-7 hours job, they go back home and take care of copies and homework and communicate with parents and do tons of other stuff that they cannot do during the time in their classroom. In the class. So I just wanted to say that. Now, to go back to what you just said, Robin, I agree with you that making teaching so complex I think it's in stifle teachers, and also it's not, I don't think it's good for kids. But in the meantime, how do we then have teachers not going too much to the extreme, where if we don't have a system in place to make sure that they providing the right education, and we have metrics to to judge how teachers are going to do their job, and how do we help them to be promoted, to help them to have a raise, maybe a bonus, I don't know, making sure they're still doing their job. How do we do that without having those checkbox, or at least having them following a curriculum and having metrics attached to the curriculum to the judge is not the word I'm looking for, to what's the word I'm looking for? To
evaluate.
Thank you so much. To evaluate them. So
Yeah. So I mean, no, your point is well taken, and we have to find a balance. I think what I'm getting at is there's a difference between telling a teacher that they need to get results, and we're going to maybe even test for those results. I mean, I'm a bit old school. I'm for test the kids. I haven't got a problem with that. But what I'm, I guess, kind of suggesting or implying is that the problem comes about when you're too specific on not only what the teachers must teach, but how they must teach it. No, allow the teachers to use what's best in their skill set, what they understand about the culture of that particular year of children, that particular class. Different classes and different years are different. I mean, I'm an academic dean at a private educational institute, right? That's based in Oxford. We work in the UK. We work in the US. I don't have any of the difficulties of regular teachers. I'm not a regular teacher, but regular teachers at kind of government-run schools full-time that we're talking about. I don't have to face that, thankfully. I don't think I'd be good at it for all the reasons we've discussed. But even I know that from teaching in seminars, or even from just giving a lecture, that each group is different. What will work for one group does not work for another. And the more experience I have as an educator, the more I am able to intuit the best way to approach one group of students versus another group of students. And it's no good if you tell me, here's how you have to do it in every case. Check this box. The same box is for every group. The same box is for every single child. Even though, I mean, we're all human, bringing different experiences, different concerns, different strengths, different weaknesses, different fears, all of these things. So, I run. You know that I run an organization of about 100 volunteers called Watching America. I've run it for 16, 17 years, and I have very little involvement day to day with the running of that. There's about 100 people in it. On average, it goes up and down, but there's usually about 100 volunteers involved in watchingamerica.com. What is my job? My job is to recruit the right people and then trust them to get on with it.
Yep.
Just trust them to get on with it. The responsibility as the publisher or the founder or the guy at the top of the pyramid or whatever you want to call me, right, is to find the people I can trust to do the job well. That's my duty, not to then tell them how to do it and to frustrate them and constrain them. And I think maybe paradigmatically that's what I believe in. And I think I believe in that, certainly in education, but I believe in that in all kinds of, work projects, work environments. If you can't trust the person to do it the right way, then you shouldn't hire that person, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. So, and you're a project manager. I'm sure you have a good sense of this too, Ismaine, and you have opinions on it. Here we are. Education's always been very important to me, I think, because my identity, some kids are sports kids, some kids are music kids. I was a nerd. I was just the academic kid. My identity as a youngster was being the smart one. That was the only thing I had going for me. I wasn't popular. I wasn't any of that. But what I had was, was schooling, my care about Yeah, even as a teenager, I was very passionate about finding the truth about things, and still am. So yeah, I think I feel quite strongly about this, and also I know, this is probably true for everyone or for most people, but my best teachers, they still matter to me. Going back through. Even back to primary school, I can remember a particular teacher that had a huge influence on me. Primary school, there was once a great advertising. Kudos to the British government. I don't usually say this, but there was a fantastic advertising campaign that the British government did back in, again, I don't know, probably I think it was the 90s. To recruit teachers, which is always a problem, by the way, in a government-run education system, is recruitment. We could talk about salaries and working conditions and all of that, but recruitment's a problem. And the government, I remember, had this great campaign, billboards all over the country that says, nobody remembers their best accountant. The point being, everybody remembers their favorite teacher. And they just chose different, professions. You don't remember your best, but everybody remembers the teacher. And teachers matter. They really do.
Yeah, that's true. I remember a couple of them that I like very much, and from middle school to high school. And what you just said is absolutely true. And I love that we're going to end this show on that lovely note to your teachers. Maybe they will listen to this show and maybe he's talking about me. Thank you very much for being with us. If you like this show and the other ones we've done, feel free to share this channel. We are on Rumble and on YouTube with your friends and family. Smash that like button and comment. Let us know what you think of this episode and the other ones. We would love your support. Don't hesitate to tell us if you would like us to discuss something about France, the UK, or America. And we will see you all later. Thank you, Robin, again for this great discussion, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Ismaine. So this one's dedicated for the teachers. I think we'll put that in the blurb.
Exactly. Bye, everyone.